With the third season of the Chargers franchise coming to an end, it's time to look ahead to the offseason, and specifically the draft, as we look to get some key upgrades for our team. We're going to spend today's video looking at this upcoming draft class, my favorite players, the strengths of the class as a whole, so we can have a plan of how to best fill our needs heading into this offseason. Right now, we are projected to have the 23rd pick in the first round. We have a pick in each round along with 2 in the 5th. We currently have 3 picks in the top 100. Right now, I would have to say that our biggest needs heading into this offseason are along the offensive line, and those are some big issues we have to address. But then on defense, I'd also like to address the safety spot along with our pass rushing depth, whether it be at outside linebacker or defensive line. Let's take a look at the top players in this draft class, beginning with Berry College from Alabama. There are a couple quarterbacks here in the top 10. I haven't scouted all of these players, but my favorite player so far, I know he's going to probably go a lot higher than we're going to be selecting, but my top player right now would be Cornell Ezekiel, pass rusher out of Auburn, 6'5", 245, that's a good frame. B+ finesse moves, B+ hit power, B+ block shedding. That is very good day one impact, and I expect him to go probably in the top 5. Another very intriguing prospect is Corin Haggerty from Penn State. You see all these big corners now coming into the league, and he's 6'4", 209. He's got B+ zone coverage. He can fit right into that cover 3 that you see in Seattle. And we like to run cover 3 as well, but I expect him to be another probably top 5, top 10 selection. We see a lot of different positions represented here in the top 10. I like that. We have a middle linebacker that is in the top 10, a defensive tackle, a couple quarterbacks, but pretty good spread here. Now let's take a look at each position. Let's begin at quarterback, of course the most important position. Now, we drafted Cole Hartman in the first round last year, and there's a good chance he ends up being our starter next season. There are 5 first-round quarterbacks this year, and I like to see as many as possible in a situation like this because I want other teams to be selecting positions that we don't need. So I haven't scouted these top 4 players. The ones I have scouted, I haven't been all that impressed with from just like an overall standpoint, like throw on the run, not seeing this short accuracy, I don't like that. A- short accuracy here is good, but medium, I'm a little concerned about that for Malcolm Daly. But I'm not worried about these quarterbacks. Maybe we have to go and find a backup at some point, and I'll scout the rest of these players and see if there is an ideal backup. But we also still have Gordon Urban on the roster and can always go out and sign a veteran. At running back, I have a big decision to make regarding Melvin Gordon. Do we give him a long-term offer, or do we try and start over a bit at running back? We could stick with the players we have: CJ Prosise, Barry Nsekhe, Zach Bogan. And I've scouted the running backs in this class to see if there is a great running back for us to go after. I'm not sure this running back class is as good as the ones we've seen in the past. We have 2 players who could go in the first round. Tyler Wilds, though, we have him as a 3rd round talent. The top 3 looks good, but there are definitely going to be some weaknesses with his game. Courtney Creighton, B+ elusiveness, B spin. If he ends up running a fast 40, I could see him going pretty early in the draft, but I probably would not spend a first round pick on a running back unless it was a Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson caliber player. There's a much better chance that we select a running back later in the draft. Maybe once we get into the 3rd and 4th round, it begins to be considered. Now, we have a good power back in Barry Nsekhe, but I still wanted to see what these other players could do. We see their top 3, and then we'll see their combine later. Trey Daniels here from UTEP, almost 240 pounds, A- trucking, B+ stiff arm. We'll see what kind of a combine he delivers. Then there's Steven Smiley from Boston College, another very tough runner, great stiff arm, B trucking, 23 years old at 233. I would like to probably find a different style running back because we already do have Barry Nsekhe, who came on strong toward the end of this year. But a lot of the good running backs I end up uncovering here are power backs. So I'll continue to scout these players once we get more points, but I'm so far not seeing anything I'm too excited about. Here are the fullbacks here. I don't spend much time here, and I'll consider if I want to keep a fullback on the roster next year because every roster spot is pretty valuable when you have some good depth players like we do, and it might just make more sense for us to not have a fullback because we don't go offset I or I formation very often. At wide receiver, 3 players projected to go in the first round, a good group of second rounders, but we have plenty of good receivers and some that don't get much playing time like Harmon Whitaker. So I like to go and just see if I can find a couple mid-round values, and so far I have not found that player that I want to target. I will try to find maybe a 4th or 5th round receiver that can challenge for a depth spot, but it's not a high priority whatsoever. I have done some scouting here at tight end because I do like having 2 very good receiving tight ends. Derek Annelli has been alright, and Hunter Henry has been very good. So I just wanted to see if there was a good tight end to pair up with him, maybe someone who can split into the slot more. I keep looking back on when we passed on Cameron Blanton, and he's now become a Pro Bowl player in Chicago. And if I had known that he was the caliber of player he was, I probably would have selected him. So if I can find a player with that kind of skill set, I think I would probably go and take him. I definitely value blocking tight end on the roster, and right now my favorite at that spot would be Shaquem Cooper from Indiana State, whose best trait is run blocking. Doesn't seem to be much of a receiver. We'll see how his combine checks out, but he might be a target for us if he goes past the 3rd round. Of course, let me know who your favorite prospects are down below in the comments section. And by the way, the off-season stream is going to be tomorrow, Saturday, here on my channel. Early afternoon, I'd say around 2 or 3 p.m. Central Time. I'll have an official announcement soon on my channel. But now let's continue with the offensive line. I was hoping we could find some true elite prospects to go and upgrade the biggest weak spot of our roster. And I have not found that player necessarily. There are some good offensive linemen here, but looking for B+ pass block, have not found it at any of the 5 positions. So my early plan right now in the offseason is to make sure we have the money, the cap room, so that we can go and get offensive linemen in free agency. If there is a top tier tackle, I want him. If there's a great guard, I want him. We have to have a better offensive line if we're going to get better than we were this season. And the offensive line was a big reason why we regressed as a team this year despite having great playmakers. So who are the best offensive linemen in this class? Well, we have a couple left tackles here. Trey Adai has B pass and B run block, C+ impact block. I would have to say he's probably my favorite offensive lineman in this class, but there's a really good chance that he's not available when we are finally on the clock. Do I want to trade up for an offensive lineman? I would if it was maybe a blue chip or just a higher tier. I think Adai is pretty good, so I'd have to consider it at least, but I don't want to give up a lot of picks. There's Dalen Hoyt from Wisconsin, who has pretty good traits here across the board. B- pass block, only 21 years old. Definitely an option for us in the first round if he is still available. He is a late first round prospect. If you're looking for a left tackle outside of the first round, I think you're going to have very slim options, although there is 6th round pick here, or 6th round prospect, Noah Metcalf, who does not appear to be a day 1 starter by any means, but at least has decent pass block as a rookie. At the guard positions, we have some good run blockers here on the board, and Lincoln Chavis is the top prospect here, 6'5", 341, a big bulldozing run blocker, but we have to get better at pass protection. That's our primary concern, so I'm not sure if he'd be a target of ours in the first round. I think I'd be a lot more likely to wait until later and take a player like Eric Downing, who has great run blocking already, but would just be a much better value for us. Now, I think our center position is pretty stable, but I always want to see if any of these players could kick out to guard and be reliable pass blockers for us. I will still scout a couple of these players. I still need some more points to do that, but haven't found any centers that are all that intriguing quite yet. At right guard, 2 more on the watch list. Will Kinney from Florida, who's another run blocker, but then Marcus Cadu, a 3rd round prospect with B- pass block, B- impact block, 24 years old. He'll definitely be a player that I target because his talent level is above his projection, and if you can potentially get him in the 3rd round, I think that's a pretty good value. Finally, at right tackle, there weren't many draftable prospects. Jaquan Peck was the best here, but he's a 4th round prospect, and we're looking for starting caliber players. So I think that free agency is our best bet to get the upgrades that our team needs. So I've talked about adding depth along the defensive front, and I haven't fully scouted him, but I found a player that we're going to need to keep an eye on. Antonio Pierre-Paul is a 3-4 run stopper, but B+ power moves, B+ block shed. That's a player with the type of combination you look for as a starter. Now, Corey Liuget is starting to get closer to 30 years old. I want to get better depth. I think it makes complete sense to go and target a player like Antonio Pierre-Paul. Maybe even take him around earlier than projected, because that skill set is not messing around. If he has a good combine, absolutely. 3rd round, that's a lock. I'm always looking for pass rushers, even those that only have one real strength, like Dion Drayton here from East Carolina. If you have at least one pass rush move that you can rely upon, and you're a good athlete, that's good enough for me to be interested in acquiring you for depth purposes. At right end, we have some more players here near the top of the board, like Andre Wynn, who's a power rusher who fits a 4-3 scheme, but we could always find a role for him, perhaps an outside linebacker. Then there's DeJuan Gregory, who could also probably be an outside linebacker with a more finesse move focus, a speed rusher, definitely a player I'll keep an eye on. If we end up going and getting offensive line help in free agency, and we have our quarterback situation taken care of with Cole Hartman, 1st round kind of becomes a real best player available scenario, and I can go and take a defensive end or a pass rusher early if I want to. Now, normally when you see a 2nd round prospect with 6th round ability, you wouldn't focus much on that player, but with B+ power moves, I'll keep an eye on if DeAndre Bell ends up sliding down in the draft, and if he's available in like the 4th or 5th round, then I definitely look to take him. With this being a strong defensive tackle class, I made sure to scout all of them, because are all these players going to go on their projected round? Probably not. You can get some good value here potentially, but I did not find that prospect that really excited me. That player that had a great blend of run stopping and pass rushing. We have some run stoppers here in this draft class, and that's basically it. I'm not really impressed overall by these defensive tackles for our needs specifically, and I don't see any being elite prospects with strengths that are only at a B range. So that's kind of disappointing. But I think that could be interesting for players that are down here in this range, because like the number 11 defensive tackle is still a 3rd round prospect, so I'll definitely be scouting a lot of these players because they're going to be available at a good value spot. We talked about Cornell Ezekiel already, but how about Leo Lett? Prototype outside linebacker with A+ hit power, B block shedding. If he has a good combine, I'd be very interested. Now, he is 24 years old, so I'm a bit worried about not knowing the rest about his skill set, whether he can cover, whether he can rush the passer. But if he has a good combine, I'll keep my eye on him. I scouted some inside linebackers here, and they appear to be kind of like the linebackers we already have, more downhill run stoppers. We'll see how the combines check out, but I don't think that we would be interested in these players necessarily. Maybe Jabbar Bullough, because he is a cover 2 type, and I wonder if he does have a little bit of coverage in his game, but that early in the draft, probably not going to happen. At the opposite linebacker spot, there's nothing that really jumps out to me here. But when you go down the list, you see some decent value, including Camille McDougal from Ohio State, who could be a good pass rusher, and we'll of course look to see how the combine score looks. Then we get into the secondary, and perhaps we have a little bit of turnover this year if Casey Hayward doesn't stay around. So I wanted to see what I thought about this corner class, and I'll check more of these mid-rounders I haven't gotten a chance to scout yet. But the early prospects, I was kind of iffy on. Corin Haggerty does have great zone coverage and good man coverage, and he's 6'4", so would I be interested? For sure, but he's going to go pretty early, it looks like. Then there's Dexter McGowan from Clemson, who is 5'11", 192. I'm not sure if he's a first-round caliber talent, so I'm more interested in these third-rounders and fourth-rounders. Now, safety is an interesting one. We have Christopher Costin, who was undrafted, and I think he's become like a league average caliber safety. Then on the strong side, we've played Bakari Rambo, we played Larry Wilbur, and I'm not sure what I want to do with Wilbur next season, if it's going to be at safety, where he can cover tight ends more often, or if it's going to be at cornerback if Casey Hayward leaves. So, safety is a possibility for us, but no elite cover safeties at the free safety spot early in this class. I have a couple on the watch list. There's also Cedric Bonner and JT Sowell, but I'm just not all that impressed by the free safeties. At strong safety, I definitely like Tyrone Brightful from Georgia Tech. He does have coverage as his best skill, and his hit power and tackling are kind of on par with a lot of the safeties that you end up finding, so a late second round prospect here might not be a bad player for us to target. Hopefully he runs a good 40. I do have a couple more players on the watch list, Dillard McMillan and Antoine Middleton, but after we selected both Mike Quick and Trevor Amato in the middle of last draft, I'm not sure if I would take another mid-round safety without a great trait besides hit power, unless the combine was off the charts. So that gives us a good look at the strength of each position and the players that we're going to be looking at our positions of need. I do think this could be a busier free agency offseason for us, and then in the draft, I'd like it to be where we don't have to worry about filling one or two great needs. I like to have a lot of that solved in free agency, but the offensive line issues are so vast that might not be possible. Regardless, I think there are some very interesting players for us to target early in this class, and I also think that we can get some great value in the middle at different areas that can strengthen depth or areas that were kind of weak. There are still a lot of mid-round players that I'll be scouting during the actual off-season, but let me know down below in the comments, who are your favorite prospects that you saw so far, and who do you think can help us most heading into Season 4? Whether it's a player that we can, take in the first round or have to trade up for, who are your favorite players that you saw today? Now, we have some draft stories here, and one player that is mentioned multiple times on here is left tackle Dalen Hoyt, who had a flawless all-star performance, and I wonder if he's going to be one of those players that has very high development. So, as he's getting some praise here, let's just double back and check out his abilities. He is the second-ranked left tackle in this class from Wisconsin, 6'7", 320, only 21 years old, so potentially very young with a lot of upside, and a pretty balanced skill set to begin. I think that he's going to be a player that we definitely target. The other player that you see multiple times on here is Cecil Horn, who was an All-Star Game MVP. And you can also see that it looks like teams are willing to trade up for him after that performance in the All-Star Game. So let's go check out his abilities. Cecil Horn is a pass rusher, and judging by our scouting, he was a bit overrated. Still might be a good pass rusher, but doesn't have another skill that he can really pair up with it right now. He's only 22 years old from Kentucky. Maybe he has a good combine and does go earlier than expected. One thing to remember is that we're supposed to have the 23rd pick in the draft, and left tackle Dalen Hoyt is the 21st ranked prospect, so he's right there where we could be selecting. But I do think that it might be a situation where we have to give up something to trade up, because otherwise we could miss out. He is the second ranked left tackle, and I'm going to be nervous if we try sitting at 23 and taking him. And for any of you wondering the age of our roster right now, we don't have that many players over 30, and some of them are actually backups. We have Garrett Selleck on the roster, Carl Klug, Joe Barksdale, Melvin Ingram is now 30. But we do have a fairly young roster. Majority of our team is 25 and under. And we're going to add hopefully another good group of rookies this offseason to help us strengthen the foundation that we have here. Now, just to give you an idea of how little impact we had from our draft class this year, I'm going to go through our selections. We ended up taking Cole Hartman, of course, in the first round, who did not play a lot this year. He had a game where he got in late, threw an interception. He also got hurt. He only threw 10 attempts, 5 completions, 60 yards. Had a couple good throws, I remember those. But obviously that was a pick for the future. Then in the second round was when we selected Darvion McCullum, who struggled mightily at right guard. He had a really tough time. In the third round, we selected Corey Benoit, who ended up playing more right tackle for us, and he also had a really tough time. We then, in the 3rd round, again selected strong safety Mike Quick, who barely saw the field this year. We followed that up with backup center Max Sanchez. And Sanchez has a skill set that might keep him at a backup role. Again, in the 4th round, we then selected Trevor Amato, who had one game where he really stood out, made a couple good plays for us, and maybe he gets a chance to play some safety next year or compete for a spot. In the 5th round, we selected Brandon Yancey, who has some XP here we can use to upgrade his skills. But he had another very quiet season for us, just 1 tackle, and did not see a whole lot of playing time. Can I get some snaps here? Yeah, only 31 downs. In the 6th round, we selected Luke Eby from Hawaii, who played a little bit for Darvion McCullum once he was benched late in the season, but I still don't think he's going to be a starting caliber player. Then in the 7th round, we ended up selecting Sylvester Arsenault, who spent this year on our practice squad. We then took another receiver, Denard Martz, who also joined him on the practice squad. So, very little positive impact from this draft class. We'll see more of the positive impact probably next year from this draft class, but we'll see what kind of impact this year's class of rookies can help bring to us. So there you have it, guys. That is the scouting video for this draft class in the Chargers franchise, and we'll be going through the offseason tomorrow on my channel, streamed live at probably 2 o'clock p.m. Central Time is what I think the time could be. But I'll have an announcement video tomorrow before I go live, so you know exactly when the time is going to happen. And then we'll get on with the offseason and see how this team looks as we look ahead to year 4. Thank you all for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. Be sure to leave your feedback down below. I'm looking forward to it. And also subscribe. I'll see you later. Have a great day.